show about knitting, conversation about knitting, a little exercises and challenges. I'm your host, I'm Inbal Gross, and I am the designer behind the Knit of the Dragon designs. Duke, want to introduce yourself?
Okay, hi. Can you guess what my name is? Duke of Nico. This is my Instagram account, Nico Duke, and my Ravelry account, Duke313. I'm a knitwear designer based in Memphis, Tennessee, but I'm originally from Japan and I like knitting Japanese words and characters.
Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm the designer behind Synaptic Stitches. And I design primarily brioche. I have a background as a neuroscientist, so that helped inspire my name. And I like to design patterns that challenge you and keep your synapses firing at all times.
Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Strong Wallace. I am also known as Great Scott Knitting on YouTube, and I am the dyer behind Mount Carmel Yarns. And I love playing with yarn, and knitting is my main focus, but I love throwing color on it as well.
We are the Knittergy group, and we're gonna play a little, and we're gonna have fun, and we hope that you enjoy. So the concept of this show is to have a theme, and the whole show, the whole episode is going to concentrate around this theme. And because what we're doing now is something that is way out of my comfort zone, and I just wanted to do something crazy and to be out there as a part of the knitting community and invite my friends here to join me with this project. I can say that I am facing my fear here, and that's why the first subject of the episode is going to be facing your fear. Are you a little bit scared, or do you feel like totally comfortable?
I haven't done a lot of podcasts or anything before, so I'm a little bit nervous. It's a little bit out of my comfort zone too.
Yeah, same here. I don't have a YouTube channel. Well, I do, but it's mostly just me knitting. So I'm a little bit nervous. So I have my cheerleaders with me right now. For emotional support animals.
I guess I'm the only one that's not particularly nervous about this, because I have a YouTube channel, and my day job is basically sitting on YouTube and teaching other adults in groups of like 30 to 60 people. So to me, this is not much different than that from what I do on my day job. But what does make me nervous is, I don't know, it's that fear of failure. I want this to be really good, but sometimes in the effort to try and make it really good, it's like, you sometimes mess things up. So it's like, I think we all just need to relax, enjoy just being together and having fun.
I think we're going to evolve and learn and, get better at it in time, because we're talking about fear, and because I am just in clue 3 of Stephen West's Shaw. It hit me as the first question I want to touch is, why do people are so afraid of brioche? Jen, you probably don't have a clue why.
So yeah, I have a couple of theories. One is just that it looks different. You approach a piece of brioche fabric and it doesn't look just like stockinette. So it's foreign. So people don't know how it's constructed, how you get there, and something different is scary. So they don't know that it's going to be just those two, just slipping stitches and knitting, or slipping stitches and purling. They don't realize that it's going to be that simple. And I think the other thing that breaks people, that people struggle with, is that you have to break your rhythm. So people have this built-in muscle memory that you have for how you knit, and brioche breaks that up. You have to learn a new pattern, and that can slow you down at first and make people think that it's hard, or it's something they don't know how to do, and can make them stop. The other thing I think is that the knitting community has a lot of things that we just label as advanced techniques, and brioche is one of them, and people just decide, oh, that's too hard for me, that's scary, without thinking about what it might mean to try it. And once they do try it, they realize, oh, that's really not as bad as I was led to believe it would be.
Hey, Jen, for those who are not familiar with brioche, can you explain what brioche is? And yeah, you have
So
a
this
sample.
is a piece of brioche knitting. So brioche can be knit with one color. It's often knit with two colors, and it's a fabric that's generated by usually knitting with one color and then slipping the stitches you knit with one color when you knit, and knitting the alternate stitches with the other color. It creates this really lovely, squishy, rich, double-sided fabric.
And I would say that it's easier than like double knitting.
Oh yeah, it's definitely easier than double knitting.
And
You think
yes,
so?
it has
Really?
a worse reputation than double knitting.
Oh,
Well, I think another challenge with for some people, maybe intermediate knitters might have, is if I drop a stitch, I have no clue how to pick it back up and get it back where it should be and have it look right. I am one of these people that have avoided brioche for several years now and only touched it when I absolutely had to. Mainly because it's not that the doing of it is scary, it's the fixing it. For me, that's scary because I can never fix it in a way that it looks like it's right, and I don't want to tink all the way back.
I think you're right that fixing brioche can take a little bit more of a learning curve. And I think seeing when you drop down those stitches, how the two colors interact at the edges of where you've dropped the stitches, just takes a little bit of learning. It's not intuitive. It doesn't necessarily look exactly the same as what you would see when you're fixing something in stockinette or a stitch
stockinette
more familiar with.
or garter stitch. I mean,
Right.
those are. I mean, I think after a while, people get used to how the yarn is behaving in the construction of the piece. At least, I mean, I have reached kind of that point. Whereas brioche there's a difference because you have two different yarns that are interacting with each other in different ways on, depending upon if you're knitting flat or knitting in the round, which side you're knitting on. There's a different interaction going, or there's like a set of interactions going on as opposed to just one.
Yeah.
So that I think is the challenge to think through. So it's not intuitive just to say, oh, I'll just pick it up and put the purl bump on the back or put the purl bump in front. It's a little more mentally involved because you have to deal with, okay, there's this one strand that's coming up and around here, but this one's going as a purl. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time in one night sort of laying awake thinking about how do I fix this.
Do you have other techniques that you're afraid of? Like you never tried, but because you're like afraid of trying it?
Entrelac. I've never tried entrelac.
It is so easy. You won't believe how easy it is.
Is it easy?
That's the first time that I tried it. And it is amazingly easy. You should. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, and entrelac is not the one that I have a fear of. Although I don't like the backside of it as much, so that's why I don't do it as much. I guess for me, that maybe the knitting techniques that I fear are intarsia and simply stranded color work. And it's not the actual doing of it that scares me, it's the doing it in a way that it is correct and looks right. It becomes a tension issue.
And intarsia, like what makes you scared of it?
I don't know what magic potion to drink to make it work. And I just haven't embraced it yet. I just need to sit down and do an intarsia project. But
Because
yeah.
intarsia is basically 2 colors, and when they meet, you just need to twist the yarn so it doesn't pull out. That's all. So
Yeah, they
Intarsia is-
that's all you do. Yeah. Right. Realize it, gotta do it.
I always make a big mess when I do intarsia because there's so many bobbins and you
yeah,
have
the
to do,
bobbins.
and it's a tangling mess for me.
Yeah, I haven't done intarsia with all the little bobbins. I've just done it with, sort of bigger color blocks. And doing that, it's really easy with brioche. I'm so used to having to manage 2 or 3 colors that are going to get tangled together. So, just having only, 2 colors in a row and switching back and forth between the 2 of them, I think is a really approachable way to start intarsia. I am a little intimidated of the yarn barf that would happen if I had 10 little bobbins on the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've heard horror stories about people, playing with it and starting it and then getting about maybe a third of it done and saying, no, I can't do this anymore. And it just goes away.
That's one, you were saying fixing a mistake in brioche is scary. Fixing a mistake in intarsia, I don't know if you even can, if you realize, oh, I've knit the wrong color or somewhere or added something I think you do have to just rip it out and go back.
Yeah.
You remember, Duke, when we did Duke and I were together in the knit along with Shirley Payton. And and that
you
was
did intarsia.
You remember I did a coat with cables and intarsia. So I had at one time 14 strands of yarn hanging all around. And in the middle, I said, I cannot do this anymore. I really so tired of it, but I just had to finish it.
But you did it.
Yeah. If it won't be knit along, I don't think I would have finished it.
Thinking of 14 strands of yarn, something that really should stop me from doing projects is weaving in ends. I hate weaving in ends, and I keep picking up these things that end up with, I have a sweater where I have to weave in 112 ends at the end, and I'm the crazy person who will count all of them. I now will avoid a project because it will have too many ends to weave in.
Well, that, okay, so the most recent Stephen West, mystery knit along, 5 colors, constantly changing, tons of ends to weave in. I have to say that his technique of weaving in as you go, where you simply wrap the end around your live yarn, has been a lifesaver. It has saved me so much mental headache about, okay, what's going to happen when I get to the end of this project and spend a day just weaving in ends. It's a game changer to be able to weave in as you go.
Okay, so talking about techniques, we're gonna have a little exercise, I can call it. Do you have a pen and paper? Just to write down something. Okay, we're gonna look at some techniques. It's gonna be 5 different techniques, and I want you to rate them from 1 to 5. Like 1 would be, oh, that's a cool thing to try, and 5 would be, I'm not gonna do this ever, okay? And I want to just tell the viewers so that if you want to do this with us, so grab a pen and paper and you can do it with us. And at the end, it will all make sense. So let's start. Okay, first technique is Shetland lace. Second one, Japanese cables. Number 3 is beads. Four, folded knitting. And number 5 is embroidery.
So we're gonna rate it 1 to 5, and 1 being
Okay, nice.
like the
Maybe I'll try it. And 5, it's like I'm not gonna try it ever. So who wants to start?
I know, it's like I feel like I need a little one of those little match game things where you put your card in and it lights up and you know I'm done.
Yeah.
Right, ding.
All right, so my order for me, Shetland lace, no fear. I jump into that easily. Given the right weight of yarn, maybe not cobweb, but you know,
Yeah, like a ribbon.
lace weight fingering. You know, I definitely do that. Japanese cables, no fear there. I've never done it, but I love the look of it. I would certainly try that. Beadwork, I can give her, you know, it's not something I fear, and I don't think it's hard. I mean, I've looked into it, but I don't know. I'm not a big beadwork fan. Folded knitting, the very first time I've ever done any folded knitting was actually on the Stephen West shawlography with the welts.
Yeah, the
You know,
wells.
those welty things, you know, those little things. That was the first time I ever did any of that kind of folded knitting, which was a little fiddly, but I don't know, it's not bad. I'd probably do it again. And that embroidery, no experience with it, and I don't know. It's not that I would fear doing it. It's just, I don't know. It's not something. It's too close to sewing, and I don't like sewing.
So what would you rate as your number 3?
Beadwork.
Mark.
So for me, it goes Shetland lace, Japanese cables. Beadwork is number 3. Number 4 is folded knitting, not from a fear point, but just from I'm not going to do a lot of it. And then embroidery would be the last thing I would ever do.
Okay, so circle beads.
Circle bead.
You'll
Okay.
understand later why.
Okay. No.
Okay,
Trust the process.
Duke, your turn.
okay. My number 1. I feel like I'm the total opposite of Scott because my number 1 is embroidery. I don't like sewing either, or I don't really have a lot of experience sewing, but embroidery for some reason attracts me. Embo, you know that I love duplicate stitching, and duplicate stitch is a kind of embroidery. So that's my number 1. Number 2 is folded knitting. I'm not familiar with folded knitting, but it sounds very attractive. It sounds like it's going to create a beautiful texture. So I'm attracted to it. My number 3 is bees. I've tried it. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. So it's number 3. Number 4 is Shetland lace. Lace is something I would rather avoid because when I make mistakes, it's impossible for me to fix it. Similar to the conversation we just had. So that's number 4. Number 5 is Japanese cables. When I look at the charts, I have Japanese Stitch Bible, and those charts are so intimidating and it looks impossible. And I've taken classes and tried it, but it still scares me. So that's
Okay,
it.
so now your number 3 is beads also, right?
Yeah.
Mark.
Yes.
I would say my number 1 is Japanese cables. I love cables. When I first started knitting, I knit like 12 hats immediately, and then went to the owner at my local yarn shop and said, I'm bored, I need a project I can't finish in a weekend. And so I then knit a giant, intricately cabled jacket. It was my first like thing I did other than like a basic hat, because I'm crazy. So I love cables, and the idea of like doing something like really intricate and learning something new about cables is really exciting to me. And then Shetland lace is my number 2, something I have wanted to try for a long time and just it's never shifted quite to the top of the priority list that I actually do it. But I do want to try that at some point. And then for number 3, I put embroidery. I think it looks cool. I've seen some really nice knitting patterns that have embroidery in them lately, and would like to try it, but I'm much more drawn to things where I have knitting needles in my hand than a sewing needle. And then I put folded knitting 4th. Again, like Duke, it's not something I was familiar with. Not the most exciting thing to me, but maybe if I learn more about it, I'd like it more. And then beads I put 5th, because it's just not my thing. Not my style.
Okay, so mark the embroidery.
Okay.
My first is Japanese. I've done it, and for me it's just cables with more stitches in it. So yeah, for me it's not that complicated. Number 2 would be beads, because I wanted to try it many times and I just didn't get the chance to do it. Number 3 would be embroidery, because I think that something with embroidery, like on the one hand, you have a fabric and you can add a layer, like draw something with embroidery, which can be really cool. But on the other hand, if you have a woven fabric, it's easy to go wherever you want with your thread. But with yarn, it's not. You have the stitches and you have to like consider where do you put each thread. So I don't know if I would like it or not. So that would be my number 3. Number 4 would be the folded. I've never tried it and it looks a little complicated, but I may try it. Many people are doing sleeves with folded things and it looks really cool. And the Shetland lace looks to me like a hell.
Lace is easy.
So I would mark embroidery as my number 3. We talked about it a little bit, but let's talk about mistakes. Do you fear making mistakes, or not so much, just a mistake?
I feel not realizing I made a mistake until way after I've done it. Because I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and so I will go dig the mistake out, and if it's 20 rows back, I'm still going to go dig it out. I'm just going to have to drop back 20 rows and work it back up. And maybe I mostly knit fabrics where I'm comfortable fixing mistakes. I think, as I said, I've been wanting to try something like Shetland lace, and I just don't have the practice with that to feel as comfortable making, with fixing mistakes. So I think on something I was less familiar with, mistakes would be scarier.
I guess with knitting, I'm not that fearful of making a mistake, mainly because I think I've realized, I did used to be, and it was a lot of it was because I wouldn't have any clue how to fix it. now in basic knitting, I kind of have a sense of how I can fix most of my mistakes, but I also have no fear now of, ripping back or tinking back to fix it. And now one of the things I've never done, although I highly recommend it, is putting in lifelines so that you can easily rip back and then start fresh from a particular point. But especially when you're learning something new, mistakes are going to happen. And as with all things, if you don't make a mistake, you're not learning.
It depends on the project I'm working on. If it's a mistake that I can easily duplicate stitch to cover it up, then I have no problem with it. But if I have to rip it back and I'm on a deadline, I have to finish it, then I would really hate it.
Do you have a problem with just leave the mistake there? I mean, if you have a shawl and it's really large and there's like one mistake there, is it a problem for you to just leave it, or do you have to fix it?
I will try to cover it up with duplicate stitch.
There is a theory, though, that with every project that you create, you leave a little bit of your soul into it. And if there's no mistakes, your soul remains trapped in that project. So you have to leave a mistake so that your soul can escape.
Interesting. I think one of the things that makes me more scared of mistakes, like it depends on what fiber I'm working with. So if I'm, knitting something with mohair that is not forgiving of ripping it back out and fixing it, or I just knit with a wool silk blend that was really surprisingly grippy and really seemed to fray a lot whenever I would pull it out and reknit it, then I'm a lot more anxious about not making big mistakes.
Scott, I wanted to ask you about dyeing yarn. You're the dyer, so I mean, mistakes with dyeing seems a lot harsh than when knitting.
Yeah, because you can't go backwards. You can only move forwards with dyeing yarn. Usually, it's either you get a stray dye molecule that's a weird color in a powder mix that you might have, and all of a sudden you have this really beautiful blue, and then there's this strange red green dot in the middle of it, and you're like, where the heck did this come from? And again, there's ways to fix it. You can go in and do hand painting over things that are small, or there's always over dyeing and just changing the complete nature of that skein of yarn to something else. The other thing to think about is a lot with yarn dyeing, it's somewhat subjective in what you like and what you don't like. And so what you might think is a mistake, other people might just simply see as a different type of beauty. So it's having to, in a way, yarn dyeing is both objective and very precision based from its process, but in its result, everything is much more subjective. So it's a very interesting hobby to have, that you can mix being someone who likes to do something very precise and very measured in terms of like choosing the color and the depth of shade and doing calculations and playing with math and measuring things very precisely, but then how you apply the color and the result that you get become very subjective in terms of, you can just splash the color onto the yarn and see what you get, or you can be very meticulous about placing the color with a sponge and hand painting. But then the end result is going to be whatever it is, because you're dealing with a liquid that wants to move in different ways based on different temperatures and different acidities. A mistake in yarn dyeing is often just, I didn't get what I thought I would get.
Yeah.
And then embracing what you did get.
Have you ever tried something that you just got a different result, but you kind of liked it? So you you left it or maybe make something with it?
Yeah, it's a creative journey, and a mistake can be a design element, and I tend to expand on my mistake and create something totally new.
Yeah, I think for me, I mostly know where I'm going with the design, so I would always fix the mistake and adjust it to what I wanted.
Yeah,
Now, do you ever like maybe write down, try to repeat the mistake and then save it for a future project?
Right.
I've certainly done that with yarn dyeing. Had a mistake and it's like, all right, that looked really cool. How do I do that again so that I can do it with intention?
But does it work?
Sometimes. And then sometimes you're like, wow, I'll never get back to that.
I know a lot of people like have their ideas like fully sketched out before they design something, and sometimes I have my ideas really fully formed, but sometimes I just have like a sort of this vague like dream-like perception of what my design is going to be, and I really do like to start knitting it and like let it emerge on my needles and see where it goes. And so I'm not necessarily sure sometimes things are mistakes, but I have like sort of an idea of like this element needs to go over here, and maybe I don't put it exactly where I would have calculated it, but it just sort of grows organically. And sometimes that works out, and sometimes I need to go back and change it.
Yeah, and also sometimes you create something and then the result is like different, and you say, that's nice, and you go with it, but then you reach a point and you say, oh, okay, I didn't take into consideration I don't know, the place where the neckline is. Okay, that's not gonna work. Let's go to another little exercise, and that's gonna be motifs. I'm gonna ask you a few questions regarding just silly fear things and, be playful. What gives you the chills more? A snake, a cockroach, a spider, or a shark?
Just pick one answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're home alone at night. What do you fear more? 1, a ghost appears in the bathroom mirror. 2, a burglar intruding your house. 3, an alien coming to abduct you. Or 4, the cat messes your yarn. If you were superstitious, what would be worse? 1, walking under a ladder. 2, a broken mirror. 3, opening an umbrella inside the house. Or 4, a horseshoe with the ends pointing down. So let's hear your answers.
For the first one, what gives me the chills the most, I think I went with the shark, probably because it's the thing that I have the least actual exposure to, so it seems more scary, it's less familiar. What am I afraid of? I mean, the most likely scenario is a cat messing with my yarn. You've probably seen them running around behind me. I've gotten really good at figuring out places around my house where I can stash my projects and they can't get to them. But every once in a while I'm dumb and I leave something out and they get to it, and that freaks me out. But the thing I'm actually afraid of would probably be a burglar in my house. From the superstitions, the one that, I don't know, I'm not particularly a superstitious person, but I feel like walking under a ladder has like, there's probably a reason that became a thing people were afraid of, because it could fall and hurt me. So let's not do that. And I'm super clumsy, so I would be the person that like hit the ladder and then it fell on me, and then everybody got hurt. So
Okay.
Oh, what gives me the most chill? Cockroach. It exists in my house. And whenever I see one, it gives me the creeps. What scares me at night is burglar. I'm very paranoid in that sense. I'm always wondering if someone's going to break in at night. That's my fear. I'm not superstitious either, so I chose walking under a ladder for the same reason Chen chose. Seems hazardous to do so.
The thing that creeps me out are spiders. Always have. When I was a kid, I used to run around, and wolf spiders would always build these great big giant webs, and I invariably I would walk into one and I would see the great big spiders on me, and I would be like, oh yeah,
Have you,
spiders creep me out.
have you seen Arachnophobia, the movie?
I do find spiders fascinating, and what they do is not unlike what I've done with lace, but no. My fear in the night would be someone breaking into the house, a burglar type of thing, and then superstition. Like everybody else, I am not superstitious at all, but picking one for me, it would be the broken mirror. When you look at a broken mirror, the visage that comes back to you is distorted, and you get a distorted view of yourself.
My selections is cockroach. I can't stand the sight of them. They just give me the chills. Alone at night, especially if I see a scary movie, I would say it's a ghost in a mirror or something, when something behind you in the mirror. That's like one of the things that really freaks me out in movies. That's my selection. And I'm not superstitious. It was just a question, for fun. I would also say broken mirror, and for the same reasons, Scott, you said. The things you picked out, take each one of them and just create a shape, a symbol, a motif out of that thing.
3 symbols or one symbol that incorporates all 3?
One for each.
Okay.
Next topic, I want us to talk about colors. Is there any color that you fear of working with? I know that many people are afraid of working with black, for example. It's because you don't see the stitches and it's very hard to work with. But do you have like a color that you see and you say, no way, I'm not gonna touch this one? For me, it's neons. Like when I see neon colors, I'm like, really, I can't stand them.
My first thought when you said that was beige. I sort of, like I've said before, like if I'm knitting and I look like a rainbow threw up on me, then I'm sort of doing it right. Like that's what I'm going for. I love color. I love really bright saturated colors. So like just beige, like it kind of makes me really sad. If it's like a natural undyed wool, I can work with that. But like just like really boring neutrals, just like so much of my knitting is around like keeping myself engaged and not getting bored and keeping my mind active. And the other one for me, I'm learning to love yellow. Yellow was not a color I was into at first, and it's funny that I'm wearing some yellow, and I'm starting to love like golden yellows and more like honey colors, but that like acidic like lemon yellow, I still can't go there.
I like vivid, high contrast, bright colors. So pastel colors is not so much attractive to me. I never use neons, but I don't have a problem with neon colors.
I'm kind of with you, Imbal. I'm not a big fan of neons, but especially neon green. When I see the bright, it's almost a sickly neon sort of green color. I just like, what would I ever do with that would look good? So yeah, out of all colors, that's probably the one I'm like, no sickly neon greens.
how do you feel about speckled yarns? I mean, I've never knitted anything with speckled yarns. For me, it's like something a bit scary because it's unpredictable, and I can't. Yeah, I always see these skeins of yarn, and they look so good. They are so beautiful, but I don't know how to predict the fabric that they're gonna make.
I think what is interesting and fun about a speckled yarn is that every stitch that you make can be completely different in terms of the color that's in that stitch. It's like, you know, one stitch might be green, and then 3 stitch later you might get an orange, you know, like what you have here. So you get these little pops of color that, you know, if it's on something as heavily speckled as this, it's going to be it's going to have a very sort of mottled effect to it in that there's just lots of colors on a sort of a base background. Whereas you might have some other type of speckled yarn where you have more color sections that also have little pops of color, kind of like a good tweed. That only is done purely with color as opposed to putting a different fiber in.
Like as a designer, right? When I see these yarns and I really want to get them because they are so beautiful. They're more beautiful than a regular skein of yarn. But then I'm thinking, but what can I design with it? Because it's like the yarn has such an intense presence that you just want to knit it stockinette.
That's something I struggle with, that I love hand dyed, I love speckled, I love variegated. I love, you know, seeing how other people have played with color and applied that to yarn. And I think so many of those hand dyed skeins are just stunning. And it's really hard for me not to want to buy every single one that I see. But I love having my knitting be really complex and designing, you know, motifs where I have lots of things going on in my knitting. And I feel like the crazy yarn and the crazy knitting fight each other.
Right.
You can either see a complex knitting pattern, yes, or you can see complex yarn, and they don't necessarily go together. So every once in a while I have to do like a palette cleanser for myself and knit something really, really simple with some crazy yarn, just to really enjoy the way somebody else has played with color instead of doing my own playing with color.
Yeah.
One of the things I love to do when I'm buying yarn is buy them in like sets. So I recently bought this set from 316 Dye Studio, which is a local dyer, which, you know, I usually go with a solid, a speckle that is, you know, a complementary speckle, and then a complementary variegated, because then I can put these in a project that, you know, it's almost like you could almost do fades, marling, or blocks of that even had texture in them with lots of interesting stitch patterns in your solid, and then you complement that with borders of the speckle or a section that's flat knitted with or garter stitch with this. So you get to play around with different stitch textures in a project that give you different effects based on the type of yarn you're choosing. Like the sweater you're wearing, Inbal, it's mosaic knitting, where you could take a solid and then throw a variegated with it, and you get this, you know, it accentuates the pattern by having this sort of crazy color as its complement.
So as a designer, I've always worked with solids or semi-solids, and I haven't used speckles or variegated yarn, but I buy them all the time because they're pretty, and it's just sitting in my closet. Maybe it's related to my fear, but I want to play with it sometime to in my design.
Yeah. So now we're gonna do a little exercise with colors. Scary movies. I mean, really, we can't talk about scary and not talk about scary movies, right? So I'm gonna show you some scary movies, and I want to see if you can recognize them. Who knows what? No, come on! I cannot believe you didn't do this.
Dry.
It's Tim Burton's movie.
Yeah, it's a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, I recognize it, but I'm so bad at movies.
It's related to Christmas.
Oh, is this Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the other one.
No, I think it's not the Nightmare Before Christmas.
No, it's not Night. No, it's not. This
Right.
is not Nightmare. It has many of the same types of characters.
Right. I'm sorry.
Now this one is something Bride.
Yeah, it's Bride. It's the.
It's
Corpse Bride.
Bride. Yeah.
The Corpse
Yeah,
Bride.
yeah. So if anyone didn't see it, it's Christmas time. It's Halloween time. You should see it. It's such a good movie. Okay, next. Which movie?
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, this one. Do you recognize this movie?
Oh, I know what it is.
Miyazaki movie, but
Yeah.
which one is it?
Spirited Away.
Yes. Spirited Away. I think I've seen it like 100 times.
It's certainly colorful.
It's so beautiful.
The Shining.
Yeah. Okay.
This one is certainly a creepy movie.
Yeah. It is, but it's a great movie.
It is. It is a very good one.
Okay. You recognize this one?
Coraline,
Caroline. Yeah. Love
based on a Neil Gaiman story.
Yeah. And last one.
Labyrinth?
Yeah, Pan's Labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, have you seen it? Spanish movie.
Yep.
And I want you to just select the one you like more. So this
As
is
an
the
image or the movie?
if you haven't seen the movie, so I guess the image,
Okay.
the Corpse Bride, It, Spirited Away, The Shining, Coraline, and Pan's Labyrinth. Okay, what did you choose?
I chose Corpse Bride.
Okay.
Black and purple, just beautiful color.
Because of the colors. Okay.
I chose Spirited Away for a similar reason, just because of so many bright, beautiful colors in there.
I am with Nico Duke that I like Corpse Bride, and a lot of it before the grays and the purples and the blues.
I also went for the Corpse Brides, but I'm glad that you chose it because of the colors, because this is going to be your color palette for the challenge that we're going to do. So that was a good move. Everything we did, all the little exercises, were basically the building blocks for the challenge. First one was techniques, right? So the technique that you circled will need to somehow be incorporated in your challenge. I didn't go for the hardest because I didn't want it to be like a headache. But number 3 seemed like a good thing to, to face your fear against it and just do something with it. The shapes, the motifs that we made, you can select one motif, 2, 3, whatever you want, but put them somehow as I don't know, as an embroidery or as a color work, or make up a cable with it or whatever. And the last thing is the color palette is selected by the movie that you select. I'm gonna send you the color palette that you selected. And the challenge is just to make a swatch, maybe 10 centimeters, 4 inches swatch, and make something that puts everything together. If any of the viewers did the challenges with us and want to show us your results and your swatches, so we're gonna open a group on Ravelry, and we're gonna have a board specific to your challenges, and we would love to see what you came up with and what you selected and how it got out. And I think it would be nice, like, to have little swatches from each episode, and maybe at the end just make a blanket out of it, or maybe even use it for, you know, for your next design or whatever. It could be nice. If any of the viewers, if any of you want to make any comments, you can put your comments down below. We will also have a board on Ravelry for Q&A. If you have like question for any of us, please put your question down. We will have links to our Ravelries and all the information about us. We'll put them in the description below, and you can put the thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to this show, because we're gonna have some more episodes coming. And also, if you have like a suggestion for more themes or ideas for more subjects you want us to talk about, so please comment. That's it for now, so we're gonna say goodbye for the viewers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.